Hey everyone, so awesome to be here for another Friday with all of you. My name is Becky Schnekser and I have been coming on every Friday around this time, 4 p.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time, just to talk with teachers, talk with different educators and friends around the world. I know we've all been thrown into this situation of remote or distance learning or online education, whatever terms you're using for it. We've all kind of been thrown in this situation and we're all trying to figure it out together, and it's super, super easy to be overwhelmed. There are so many things happening around us, so many things that we want to try, and we're getting all these emails from companies or different organizations offering to help and offering to give us ideas, which is amazing, but it's so easy to get overwhelmed and just not know what to do or have this feeling of helplessness. So I wanted to go live every Friday with or without some friends to just have a conversation and throw some ideas out there that we have found successful in our own remote or distance learning situations and just show them off. See what other people might find useful and or what you might see or hear and tweak for your classroom or for your situation. So this week, I am by myself. Unfortunately, my awesome friends, my guests had some unexpected things happen in their lives, and I love them. I wish them an awesome Friday. I know that they're just taking a break, and I hope that they are feeling great soon and the sun is out and shining for them. Or maybe they might be tuned in right now and just taking it easy. So hello, all of my friends, wherever you are. So this week, I thought that I would show you something that I just learned myself, and I used this week with some of my second graders. But then as I was teaching second graders and as I've been making these paper beads on my own, I kept thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many ways that we could use the craft of paper beads in classrooms for students of all ages and for all subjects. So I'll tell you what I've been using it for. And then as I'm making them, as I'm showing you how to create them, I will tell you some of the ideas that I've come up with in the process of ways that I'll probably use this for other things, or perhaps you in your situation could use this craft or this activity idea in your classroom. So paper beads, I'll show you the ones that I've already made live with my second grade classes. And I'll give you a little background about why I was even doing this and kind of what sparked the idea. So I'm going to put my camera down a little bit so you can see my hand with the beads that I've made. So I've made some smaller ones. You can see those. Some of them are colorful. Some of them are more plain on white paper. Some of them are thicker. Some of them are thin. Some of them have a lot more colors than others. It just kind of depends on the paper that you're using. This one, actually these two over here that are white, I actually just made with notebook paper because that's what I had lying around. And so one of the things that I think we've all learned is that you have to kind of make do with remote learning with whatever your students have at home or whatever you have at home. And so when I was crafting this idea, ideally you're going to use magazines because magazine paper is like a perfect thickness. Magazines tend to have some colorful visuals inside that are going to make your beads nice and vibrant and full of life. But it's possible that your students, or maybe even you, might not have magazines in order to do this craft. So paper is just fine. I literally ripped this out of a notebook that I use with my students. Or I am fortunate to have some magazines, and you're gonna laugh when you see how old these are, some of them. But I do have some magazines. They're like wildlife magazines. These ones were about spiders, but this is what's gonna make you laugh. If you are, I'm not gonna ask your age because of course you never ask, especially women, what their age is. But some of you, if you're older, I would say mid-30s or older, you're gonna recognize some of these. So super colorful, but you're not gonna see these types of ads anymore, and you'll probably understand why. But so I saw this in a really, really old magazine, and I was like, oh, wow, look at all those colors. Ooh, that's an advertisement for tobacco, because it used to be a thing to have these. But these are gonna make some really awesome beads. And there was one more that I know you'll just get a kick out of. Oh, Marlboro Man. There was an ad, but I just saw this color and I was like, man, we totally have to make beads out of those. Okay, so doesn't matter what type of paper you have. Any paper will do. What you probably should have are some scissors. You're gonna need some sort of adhesive. I'm just using regular school glue. You can use whatever type of adhesive you have. Even some of my students just have stick glue, and that's fine. I prefer this, but you can use whatever adhesive you have. You could even use tape if you wanted or needed to. It's helpful to have a toothpick, but honestly, I didn't even know if I would have toothpicks at my house when I started this. You can use anything round that you're gonna wrap paper around. I did one of these on my pen. If you have a straw, like, oh, I don't know where I said it. Oh, here we are. I made one of them on a straw. So some of them will be thicker because it came around my reusable straw. Or a pencil, anything round. You could even use your finger if you wanted, anything round. So you just need paper, something to cut with, something to wrap around, and some sort of adhesive. So these are the things that I'm using. So the trick to this, and I'm going to warn you right now, I am no master at this. Like, I'm not looking to sell these or whatever. I was just looking for something to do. So my students in second grade have been studying Peruvian culture of South America. So I teach science, but I also interweave a lot of other things: global studies, cultural awareness, and indigenous knowledge, especially with South America. And so a big part of Peruvian culture is artworks, handicrafts. Like, these are from Peru. They're from the Shipibo-Canibo tribe. So I have lots of stories about this. And so while I'm teaching my students about this type of handicraft, the nature-inspired art that Peruvians make, I was thinking about what is something I can make with my students and kind of get that feel of being artisans, being people who derive inspiration from nature and then create something beautiful out of it. So, paper beads. So here's how you do it. You're gonna take whatever paper you have and you're gonna cut long, skinny triangles. So I'm gonna put this down so you're not gonna see me, you're gonna see me working. So here's my vastly inappropriate tobacco ad from back in the day. That's okay, we're gonna use it for some beautiful art. This is actually from 1989. So I told you, you have to be, a little bit older to remember these being out. But what you're going to do, and you can be super precise. If you are someone who wants these like perfect, immaculate, precise, you can measure and use a ruler to make your lines and cut precisely. Again, I'm thinking, I'm doing remote and distance learning. I'm not worried about precision. I'm worried about the act. What are we doing? How are we going to tell stories with this? How are we going to extend our learning and do something, physical with our content? So you can measure, you could do a 1/2 inch, you could do 1/2 inch width here. Sorry, let me get you closer. 1/2 inch here, and then you could do 1/4 inch over here for the tip, the very, very top of your triangle, or you can just make do with what you have, because I'm not sure that I have a ruler at home. And your students may or may not have measuring tools like that. So again, it's about the creation, it's about the storytelling, it's about the content coming alive and creating something that your students are going to remember. And it connects you with your students as well. It's great for relationship building. So let me show you. Back to this. So I'm just gonna kind of eyeball. I've got from the end, I'm gonna go like a little bit over here, and I'm just gonna cut at an angle all the way towards the top, getting thinner, 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 thin, 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 until I get to the end here. And so you'll see, here's my long triangle, right? The base is wider than the tip here. Okay, so you can make as many ahead of time as you want. So I'll just show you one for now. And then you can decide how many you want to make. Maybe you want to make 1,000. Maybe you just want to make the one. And that's fine. So I want this beautiful color to show up. So I'm going to have this side facing you. because I'm gonna put my toothpick or whatever round thing you have, pencil, pen, marker, straw, finger, whatever you have, you're gonna hold this. This is probably the most difficult part. This is, if there's gonna be a frustrating piece to this craft, this is it right here. And when I do this with my students, I have the same conversation and I just talk to them. I tell them, this is going to be challenging. This is gonna make you mad, but that's okay. We're gonna persevere through it because in the end, you're gonna have something really, really cool that you've created. And we're gonna play around with different papers and different thicknesses to make different style paper beads. So if you can stick through this really difficult, really frustrating part, you're gonna make something really awesome together. So let's keep going. You're going to, see how close I can get it, curl this around the paper clip, oh my gracious, the toothpick. And once you get that, then you keep curling your magazine around it. And you want to, it can be a little frustrating to hold this nice and tight and make sure it's straight, but it's all a part of the process. It's all a part of the fun. It's all a part of the creative process, right? So we keep going and we keep going until we get to the very bottom. Now, perfectionists are gonna have a hard time right here because you're gonna want it to be perfect, perfect, perfect. But as you're rolling, if you've done that measuring ahead of time, if you're really worried about precision here, then it's gonna be easier to have this lined up the whole time. So we keep going, we keep going. And if you're live with your students and you're just talking back and forth, right? And they're gonna be making faces and you're gonna be making faces, and it's all a part of the process. But you'll see as it's rolling up, you're seeing all those colors magically turn into this really, really cool bead. And this one's a rather wide one. The thinner that you make that initial, the bottom piece of your triangle, the more circular your bead's gonna be. So you can see this one looks way different than the one I'm making right now. This one I made thinner at the bottom of the triangle, but just as long. So it was super, super skinny piece of paper and it ended up being more round. So that's a super fun variable or super fun thing to play around with when you're working with students. And I was thinking about math and geometry. How cool would it be to experiment with different geometric patterns, different measurements? If you could throw in some metric measurements and some standard measurements, you can compare and contrast. The base of my triangle was this size, oh my gosh, and could we do area of the triangles? Right? If they're measuring these, they could find out the base, they could find out the height, and then they could find the area of the triangle that they used for this bead. And then they could compare the areas of the different triangles. And then if you wanted to do some statistics with it, they could gather all of the data and they could find all those landmarks, right? Mean, median, mode, the range, all of these things are kind of coming up all from just making these beads. Okay, so now I'm holding this together. I haven't put any adhesive on yet. So what I like to do is just hold this and just put a little dot, not a lot, a little dot here, just right on the magazine. And I just use my fingers to spread it around. And once I get to the center part, that's the little piece, that little piece that you want to stick down the entire time. And you're gonna use your fingers to hold it down. You can really coat it if you're worried about it falling apart, but it's already, I used just that teensy bit of glue and it's already sticking together. It's already ready to go. And I can go ahead and pull this off of my paper, or my paper clip off of my toothpick, and I can do another one. So there we go. Your fingers will be a little bit sticky because you're gonna have glue on them, but it's totally fine. It's part of the process, right? Now I was also thinking about using this for different patterns. So if you have your students making it with notebook paper, or if you're just making it with plain computer paper, then they can color it themselves, or you can leave it just like this, just white is totally fine. My goal with my students, I want to recreate this type of bracelet. So I'm going to be making a bunch that are just plain paper and then coloring them so they are the right colors to replicate these beads. I was also thinking, as you're making these, you could use them for math as counters. For young students, counters, you can use them for arrays. You could even have older students, you could have a partnership between older students and younger students. Maybe the older students are learning about some sort of art concept, some math concept. They create a bunch of beads, sets of beads, and then they bring them to younger students to use as counting beans, or for whatever they want to do. Maybe I was thinking a lot with younger students, they can do things with patterns, ABAB patterns, or AABB patterns, or ABC patterns. So if you look through these and you line them up, you can assign different colors or different patterns with a letter. Maybe this is your A and this is your B. So we have an A, B, and maybe I put in, I need another A. Here's an A. And here's a B. And then when I string these together, either on string, fishing line, nylon, elastic, then I could have a nice pattern on here. We can practice different patterns. We could make these friendship bracelets. We could tell stories with them. I was thinking too, how many times, let me put this down so you can see me cutting again. I love these colors, so I want to use it again. I'm going to do a thinner one. And remember how I told you before, I had a thicker base on my triangle. On this one, I'm gonna go thinner because I'm gonna try and make another one that's more round. So when I was thinking about storytelling and like language arts, or even historical figures for history, or even like human geography, looking at different cultures and settlement patterns, if you used purposefully different colors to represent different people, different cultures, different events in history, different historical figures, then you could start using these as storytelling beads, or to help remember the order that something happens, or the order of events. So you can see how this long triangle is way thinner. It should make a more round bead. Let's test that theory, shall we? So if I'm telling a story, maybe I'm telling the story of the Three Little Pigs for a young group, or maybe I'm using mythology in older students, Greek and Roman mythology, or maybe I want to put together a timeline in history. Once I make a bead, I'm going to purposefully use different colors for different symbols, different things. I could say, wow, so this main character, Three Little Pigs, let's go to that story. So here's one of the pigs, right? I'm going to make him, he's going to be short and stout, right? Because pigs are short and they tend to be stocky or fat or look like little sausages, right? So let's make our Three Little Pigs. And so you could go along with your students, you could teach them again how to make their Three Little Pigs. And they could make their Three Little Pigs whatever color they want, but 3 different colors. Maybe you could make them to match the type of house that they made. So maybe the first little pig made the house out of straw. So maybe you're going to use yellow paper for straw. And so you can make this. You can say, I'm not sure how well a straw house would stand if there was a storm. Where I live, we get hurricanes. It's almost hurricane season. It's about to start in about a month. So maybe I could connect it to science. Maybe I could connect it to weather, and what different patterns that I have at my house. So I don't know if the pig that made the house out of straw would be a very wise decision here where I am in Virginia Beach. And we could have a discussion about that. Oh my goodness, look at my little pig coming together. And this bead certainly is becoming short and stout, like a little pig might be. Okay, and as you're making all the characters, you've got your 3 little pigs, and maybe they're color coded for the types of houses they made. You make the big bad wolf. And when I think big bad wolf, I think red and black. So maybe I would make a bead that's a little bit longer, because wolves are very different from pigs. So, and you can leave it open-ended. The students can choose what colors they're using for different characters in a story, but then you can do all kinds of things. Maybe you string them together for a bracelet. It could be a story bracelet. And when they look at it, they'll remember, oh, that was the little pig that made the house out of straw. That was a little pig that made the house out of bricks. Oh, that's the big bad wolf. And I remember the patience it took for us to make those beads and the stories that my teacher told me as we were making them. So those are just some ideas that I had come up with as I was making these for my specific purpose. And then again, it doesn't have to be tied to content. If you're a parent or you are in charge of some sort of group of youth and you just want to make these for funsies, or maybe you need to raise money for some sort of trip or some sort of cause, a fundraiser. It doesn't have to necessarily be connected to content. Although, as I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, Jen Bergen, she was saying that everything always comes back to content. There's always a connection that you can make. And I think she's absolutely right. If you just think about what you're doing for a moment, I think the connections seem to light up. You can find a way to make this fit whatever content you have. So there's my little piggy. There's one of my little piggies. And see how this bead is way different than the one I just made here. This had the longer base to it, and this had the shorter base. You see the difference in those types of beads. You could even, we were talking earlier about finding the area of the initial triangle. Could you measure these? And then could you make a connection between the area of the triangle and the resulting bead? I think there's a lot that we could do with math. There's a lot of that we could do with geography. Could you make a bracelet or a necklace or any sort of beads to represent a different country? Could we compare the beads for the country that you made and the country that your friend made? Could we use these for settlement patterns? What cultures do we see in a specific geography? What about biomes? Could we use these and create little art forms to represent biomes or vocabulary words? I feel like there are so many things that we could use these for, whether it's science, math, language arts, social studies, history, geography. There are so many things that you can connect these beads to. What I'm actually going to do, I had this interesting idea while I was teaching my second graders. We've got a lot of these rolling around, right? So the empty tubes, if we cut, I'll go ahead and do it now. If we cut this long ways, I'm just going to cut one thing here. This may fit like a cuff on your arm, right? Whoa, now could we be superheroes? Could we make cuffs and use these beads to make a pattern here? What if I wanted to make some sort of pattern here to represent me or represent a culture or represent a story? Again, with the storytelling, right? Can I make something that represents an animal? Or my first graders are studying space now. Could they create an exoplanet out of these materials? What can we do? Could we make people? Could we use this just as celebration, just something fun to do with our families or with our students? Maybe you leave it completely open-ended for your students to make whatever they want. And then when they're finished, they share with the class or they share with their family what they made. What's the story behind what you did? Sometimes the story is, I didn't know what I was doing, so I just put this together and it just sort of happened. Sometimes there's a plan behind those actions. You never know until you ask. But remember, you can use any materials. You can be as precise or not as you want. Use what you have around you. Think about how you could use these materials to do something out of the ordinary, out of the normal use of them for your content or to make a connection with your students. So, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. It's super fun. This is one of, I think, the easiest and simple integrations of an idea that I've done recently. And actually, it helps calm me down a little bit too. Last week, I was super stressed, super overwhelmed. I feel like I was running like high energy with remote learning. And it all just kind of hit me at once. And I just wasn't myself. And so this is actually an activity that has helped me calm down and get back to its relationships. It's Maslow before Bloom. Making those connections, making those human connections, connections back to art, slowing down a little bit, and maybe having a little bit of fun in the process. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned a lot. If you have questions, if you have connections, if you have ideas, you're like, dang, I'm going to use this for this idea, put it in the comments. We would love to see that. We'd love to see what you're up to, what you make of this, and or share it with someone else. If maybe this isn't going to quite work for you, or you're not sure how you're going to wrap this around in your content, share it with someone else who it might help. But either way, take care of yourselves, my friends. If you're feeling overwhelmed, do something to help you get back into perspective. Do something just for you, whether it's just going outside for fresh air, reading a book, taking a nap, eating an extra piece of cake. Although I don't recommend that too much. Like, don't do that all the time, unless you really want to. If you really want to, go for it. If it really makes you feel great, awesome. But everything in moderation, right? All right, guys, I am Becky Schnekser. I hope you have an amazing weekend, and I hope that you can use this idea in your classrooms.